السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس خلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, life is such a precious gift and a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for which we should spend our entire lives showing gratitude. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran to say to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for him to say to his ummah, قُلْ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةِ وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ. Say, O Muhammad, to them that indeed my salat, my sacrifice, my life, my death, all belongs to Allah Rabbul Alameen, Lord of everything that exists. La sharika la, no partner is there along with him. The Arabic word for womb is ar-rahim, which is a derivative of where the word Rahman comes from. Therefore, in the Islamic tradition, the womb is known as a place of rahmah, of mercy, where the fetus is nurtured, cultivated, and developed, and where also the spirit of the fetus is actually, it's the place where the spirit is actually blown into the body of the fetus. So within that womb, there is physical life and there is spiritual life. It's a very special place that even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a promise that anyone that separates themselves from the womb of the mother, then he will separate himself from them. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in a hadith that was collected on the authority of Abdurrahman bin Auf, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن الله جل وعلا قال أنا الله وأنا الرحمن خلقت الرحم وشققت لها من اسمي فمن وصلها وصلت له أو وصلته ومن قطعها بتته يعني قطعته. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that God said that I am Allah. He called himself Allah, which in Arabic means the only God. That is what Allah means. Al-Ilah, the only God. I am Allah. Wa ana ar-Rahman, and I am ar-Rahman, the most merciful. Wa khalaqtu al-Rahim, and I created the womb. Wa shaqaqtu laha min ismi, and I gave the womb a share of my characteristic, of my name, ar-Rahman, mercy. He says, so whoever keeps relations and ties with the womb, I will keep ties with them. And whoever separates himself from the womb, then I will separate myself from them. So this allows us to understand the place that the womb is the place of mercy. Not only that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the intimate relationship between husband and wife, by which that fetus is nurtured in that place of mercy. As Allah says in the Quran, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Allah said, and from amongst his signs, from amongst the signs of Allah's greatness, is that he created for you men, mates, from yourselves. From yourselves. And this also dispels this whole argument and this fight between gender equality, that Allah took from Adam and created his mate. And he placed between them, so that he could find tranquility in her. And he placed between them mawaddatin wa rahmah, mercy and compassion. Indeed, this is a sign for people who reflect. So therefore, life in the womb, right? The child is conceived in an act that is mercy. Sexual relations between husband and wife is considered an act of mercy, because not only is it for you to satisfy that desire, but it's also to procreate. It's greater than just satisfying a desire. But in our day and time, this is what intimate relations between man and woman has been reduced to. Just a satisfaction, instant gratification, serves no purpose greater than that. But we understand that there's a power greater than that. There's a purpose greater than that, and that is to become a vehicle for the procreation, to bring a vehicle for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to bring another human being into this world, to give another soul an opportunity to have a human experience. So the womb is a place or the relations between husband and wife is an act of mercy. The womb is a place where the fetus is nurtured and a place of mercy. And then the same child exits the womb of the mother in search of mercy. This is why, as human beings, we respond to behaviors that entail or that are framed in mercy better than we respond to actions or behaviors that entail harshness, that entail roughness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. That it was by the mercy of Allah that you, O Muhammad, were merciful to your companions. You see the line of mercy, the chain of mercy. It was by the mercy of Allah that you were merciful to your companions. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ. That if you were harsh and hard-hearted, they would have fled from around you. They would have ran away from you. And this is what human beings normally do when someone treats them harshly. When someone acts imprudent with them, acts indignant with them, we run away from the person. Why? The Prophet ﷺ said that the furthest person from Allah on the day of judgment is the individual who other people run away from them, fearing their bad character. Fearing their bad character, their imprudence, their indignation. So Allah says to the Prophet ﷺ, it was by the mercy of Allah that you were merciful to them. Because if you were harsh and hard-hearted, لَنْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ, they would have ran away from you. Human beings naturally incline towards mercy. We exited the wombs of our mothers, and we naturally incline towards anyone who shows us mercy. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in an authentic hadith, ما كان الرفق في شيء إلا زانه وما كان العنف في شيء إلا شانه. That mercy, compassion is not put into anything except that it makes it beautiful. Mercy, compassion is not put into any scenario, any situation, إلا زانه, except that it يزين and makes it beautiful. وما كان العنف في شيء إلا شانه. And difficulty, harshness is not put into anything except that it makes it ugly. Ugly situations where people don't understand the boundaries of. We transgress against one another, totally forgetting about the compassion that the believers should have towards one another. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the believers in the Quran, رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُمْ. Muhammad Rasulullah وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ وَالشِّدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُمْ. That Muhammad is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and those that are with them, ashidda'u ala al-kufar, they are stern and firm with those who are hostile towards their religion from those who disbelieve. Ruhama'u bainahum, merciful to one another. You see this quality of mercy and how it is just reiterated all throughout the Quran. That human beings naturally incline towards mercy. And in the absence of mercy, there is despair. There's despair, there's hopelessness, which could be so traumatizing to the point that the person feels self-defeated. You ever been traumatized and experienced so much pain in your life where you feel defeated, hopeless? The Prophet ﷺ warned us that there will come a time in our environments where a person would pass by a grave and they would consider the person in the grave to be in a more privileged situation, dead, than they are alive. Can you imagine that? An environment, a society, a situation so traumatizing that people would pass by a grave and wish that they were in that space. Pass by a grave believing that the person that is in the grave is now free from all of the challenges and the traumatizing situations and pain that is associated with this life. And a more privileged situation than he is alive. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تقوم الساعة حتى يمر الرجل بقبر الرجل فيقول يا ليتني مكانه. The Prophet ﷺ said that the last day will not be established until there comes upon people a time where a man will pass by a grave and he will say, Ya laytani makanahu. I wish I was in this place. I wish I was in that person's place. So I didn't have to deal with bills. I didn't have to deal with my divorce. I didn't have to deal with dysfunctional and disruptive and dismissive children, right? Who you pour your all into, only to have them turn around and completely dismiss you, completely disrespect you. Entitled. Meanwhile, they usurped your entire 20s, 30s, and 40s, only to have them look you in the face and tell you, you've never done anything for me. I was responsible for your existence. I never did anything for you. But this is what we're dealing with today. And this will be the result of severe trials and tribulation that forces the individual to consider death as an alternative to the challenges of life. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in another hadith, he said, لا تذهب الدنيا حتى يمر الرجل على القبر فيتمرغ عليه ويقول يا ليتني مكان صاحب هذا القبر وليس به دين إنما هو بلاء إلا البلاء. The Prophet ﷺ said that this dunya will not cease to exist until there comes upon the people a time where a man will pass by a grave وَيَتَمَرَّغُ عَلَيْهِ, and he will wallow down on the ground on top of the grave, desiring to be in the grave. And he will say that I wish I was in the place of this individual. وَلَيْسَ بِهِ دَيْنٌ, and he doesn't have any debts, he doesn't have anything serious that would make him or justify him feeling like that. إِلَّا الْبَلَاء, except the trials and tribulations of this life, the challenges that he has been confronted with in this life. And this can happen when there's a disappearance or removal of religious values. You look out into the world and you see people have no care or concern about God and God's rights. You see people have no care or concern about the limits of morality. You see bestiality, people having relations with animals. This is what we're dealing with, right? In our Constitution, one nation under God, right? Under what God? This is what we were taught growing up in school, to put our hand over our chest and pledge allegiance to the flag. The ending of that verse, one nation under God. Under what God? When this society might possibly be the most ungodly society on the face of the earth. But this is what people will be confronted with. We are living in times, brothers and sisters, of deep, unprocessed, raw psychological pain. Because the situations that we are confronted with, they happen so frequently. You lose a loved one, you get divorced. Some people can experience that all in one day. How about you lose your mom and you experience a divorce, a breakup with your spouse, all in one day? These things happen and we don't have enough time to process everything. Some of us are so scared to be by ourselves. Soon as we experience divorce, we jump right back into another relationship because, God forbid, I have to live with myself. Are we that traumatized? Allah forbid I have to be single for a while and live with myself. I can't do that. But this is where we are. Raw, psychological, unprocessed pain that we are transferring from one individual to the next. And the Prophet ﷺ predicted that this is what would happen, that trials would come upon people one after another. He said, Yamuju kamojil bahar, they would be like the waves of the ocean, one after another. And people during that time will become like animals. What did he mean when he said people would become like animals? Meaning our behaviors, our decisions would become more instinctual than they would as a result of a process of thinking, conscious thinking, weighing pros and cons, benefits, detriments before we make decisions. We function today, many of us, just like animals. Everything is instinctual, functioning on instinct. I think she's going to do this, so I'm going to do this. I think he's going to do this, so I'm going to do this. This is functioning on instinct, not thinking about, the situation that is in front of you, processing the situation and making mature, adult, conscious, God-conscious decisions. And so there is no time or space we're in to process what is happening. And we're not talking about natural disasters, although happening today incessantly, because natural disasters can be explained through science, prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ, as well as technology, modern technology. However, what I am referring to is senseless murder. Well, a woman would drown her children just recently. Put all 4 of your children in a car and drive the car into a river and drown all of your children. We're talking about just as recently in Philadelphia where a woman killed her 4-month-old child. How? We're talking about recently here in Delaware where a 19-year-old girl smothered a 2-month-old baby, 4-month-old baby. Smothered, 19 years old, caught on camera. Put your hand over the nose of the child and cover the mouth until the child just stops breathing. What would drive people to do these things other than raw, unprocessed psychological damage, pain? Hurt people hurt people. When we're in pain, we want to cause pain to other people. And rather than deal with our pain without causing harm to someone else, we rather take our pain out on everybody else. The Prophet ﷺ used to make a dua before he left the home. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an azilla aw uzalla aw udilla aw udalla aw adlim aw udlim aw ajhala aw yujhala alayh. Oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from going astray or leading someone else astray. That's a responsibility. I'm going to protect myself from being led astray, and I'm going to hope that I don't lead somebody else astray. Aw uzilla aw uzalla, and I'm going to ask Allah to protect me from making a mistake or causing somebody else to make a mistake. That's a dual responsibility, to not allow your toxicity to trickle over into other people. Contain your toxicity. I seek refuge with you from oppressing someone or having someone oppress me. And I seek refuge with you from acting ignorantly with someone or having someone act ignorantly with me. This is a dua that before we leave out of our homes. Dual responsibility to protect myself from the toxicity of other people and to protect other people from my own toxicity. That is the religion of Islam. That is what our religion supposes or proposes upon us. So we're talking about senseless murders. We're talking about behaviors that are uncharacteristic of conscious thinking human beings, which also includes a person committing suicide. Suicide has been rampant in our societies if you haven't been paying attention, especially amongst the youth, young people who feel the pressures of life, who haven't been taught how to be resilient, who haven't been shown from their parents that they will be protected and are safe and secure. And as a result of these pressures, it has driven many children to commit suicide, to take their own lives. Suicide is more about a person feeling defeated by the long and arduous struggle to stay alive and seeking peace from the pain that has created a hole in their spirit than it is about a person's desire to just give up on life. It's not a person that's just weak, that just decides I'm going to give up on life. This is a person who is living a life that is intolerable and is expected by the society to figure it out. And many of our children, 12, 13, 14 years old, they haven't had the tools to figure it out yet. Because we are so busy pampering our children, giving them everything that we didn't have. Well, how is that working out for us? We are creating spoiled, rotten, bratty, entitled children who the smallest little difficulty comes their way, they're ready to give their lives up. They're ready to throw it all away because they posted something on Instagram, posted something on social media, and nobody liked it. This is what we're dealing with. However, what is selfish for many of us as it relates to the issue of suicide is that we expect the person right, to endure an intolerable existence just to spare families and friends who most of the time could probably care less. You know, we show up at the person's funeral, we're wailing and crying, but when the last time you even checked on this kid? When the last time you even checked on this child? But yet we're at the funeral crying like this was your favorite nephew, your favorite niece, your favorite child, when you haven't spoken to the kid in how long? It's just a farce. It's just the facade of it all. We're supposed to appear that we care. And the actions that really show that you love and you care about somebody, we can totally care less about. The Quran and the Sunnah captures very vividly, sentiments of despair and feelings of engulfment and being overwhelmed by traumatizing events and circumstances which may drive an individual to extreme levels of depression. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala captured in Surah Maryam, the chapter of Maryam and the story of Maryam, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tasked her with carrying one of the greatest prophets in our tradition, Prophet Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. Just as a young teenage girl, she doesn't know what she's being prepped for. And then when everything is laid in her lap, she utters a comment that may seem like exposes the human side, no matter how righteous you are. Maryam was raised by her cousin Zachariah. She was raised in Beit al-Maqdis. She was raised in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by a promise that her mother made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if you give me a righteous child, I will make her life muharrara fataqabbal minni. I will make her life devoted to you. And she did exactly that. And with all of that, when the pains of childbirth drove her to the trunk of the tree, she said, Ya laytani mittu qabla hada wa kuntu nasyan mansiya. I wish I had died before this and been a thing forgotten. Feeling like you are, you want to die. Not that you want to die, but there's a feeling of being overwhelmed by your situation, your circumstance. Ibn Kathir mentioned in his tafsir of this ayah, he said, وَفِيهِ دَلِيلٌ عَلَى جَوَازِ تَمَنِّي الْمَوْتِ عِنْدَ الْفِتْنَةِ. He said, this is proof to show the permissibility of one feeling like they want to die because they're being overwhelmed by a traumatic situation. Not that you're going to commit suicide, but the feeling. What I'm trying to validate is the feeling, because it's almost like it's a crime in the Muslim community to be human. It's a crime to be human. We dismiss it as, well, you need to increase your iman. What does iman have to do with me feeling overwhelmed by my circumstance? One has absolutely nothing to do with the other. Here's Maryam, raised on obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, overwhelmed by her circumstances. She says, I wish I had died before this. Knowing that she was bringing this child into a community that was going to be judgmental, bringing this child into a community who she would not even be able to explain it to them. Being raised by parents who were righteous. They even said to Maryam, how could you do this? Immediately rushed with blame, rushed with judgment. How could you do this? Your father wasn't known to be like this, nor was your mom. Here again, living in the shadow of your parents. How could you do this? And she couldn't even explain herself. She just pointed to the child. And this was the miracle of Isa alayhi salam, who spoke in the cradle, and he defended his mother. Defended his mother. The first thing that the male child does is defend his mother. And you look at our male children today, 13, 14, 15, 16, cursing their mother out. How dare you? And in many instances, why? They feel comfortable doing that because they see the father doing it. Dad does it. Abu does it. Abi does it. Baba does it. So why should I feel comfortable doing it? Here's Isa alayhi salam in his cradle, and the first words that come out of his mouth is in defense of his mother. And unfortunately for many of us in our existence and our experience, the last words that come out of our mouths are in defense of our mother, when we pray janazah over and we want to get up and give these great, long, grandiose speeches about how great your mother was, but how much disrespect did your mother have to tolerate from you before she gets this, grandiose eulogy. the first words that he uttered was in defense of his mother. The Prophet ﷺ was asked, who is the one that is most deserving of my respect, of my companionship? The Prophet ﷺ said, your mother 3 times, and then your father. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بما جاء فيه من الآيات والذكر الحكيم أقول ما تسمعون أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إقرارا به وتوحيدا وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله سراجا منيرا. I'm mentioning this not to simply justify the feelings of being overwhelmed, but to justify the feelings of being human, which may entail being overwhelmed and being distressed at times. And sometimes I feel like in the Muslim community, it's almost like a crime to be human, right? We dismiss everything as, oh, this person is affected with the jinn. The person's not affected with the jinn. The person clearly has psychological problems. We just chalk it up. They're possessed by the jinn. That's it. That's our diagnosis. Almost as if psychological pain and trauma is not real, doesn't exist. All you got to do is increase your iman, increase your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all of your problems will simply disappear. What world do you live in? What world do we live in? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, there are example after example after example of him feeling pain from situations. He held his son, 18 months old, Ibrahim, in his arms, died in his arms. Can you imagine watching your son, 18 months old, take his last breaths in your arms? And the Prophet ﷺ starts to cry, Yabki. His companion, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, turned to him. He said, Wa anta ya Rasulullah? You cry, O Messenger of Allah? The Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Abdurrahman, innaha rahmah. He said, oh Abdurrahman, it's mercy that I can cry. It's mercy. Some people don't feel anything. It's a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I even feel. The Prophet ﷺ went to go visit the grave of his mother. And he began to cry profusely. The Sahaba didn't even know why he was crying, and his cry was so loud and so inspiring that they started crying. And afterwards, the Sahaba came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, what is it that made you cry? And the Prophet ﷺ said, Ista'adhantu Rabbi and azura ummi fa'adina li. He said, I asked my Lord permission to go visit my mother in her grave, and he gave me permission. Ista'adhantu Rabbi fi an astaghfir li ummi فمنعني من استغفار li ummi. He said, and I asked my Lord for permission to ask for forgiveness for my mother. And Allah denied me. No. Can you imagine? This was the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam crying because Allah did not give him permission to make istighfar for his own mother. Crying, feeling. Nobody said, oh, you need to increase in iman. We all going to die. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. We start quoting all these ayats and hadith and all these textual evidences to dismiss the human element. That is my concern. And even with the situation of suicide in our communities, it's almost as if we trade human emotion for textbook theory. We have a theory for everything. We can give you a theory for everything. Ayah, hadith, and give you the whole shot, the whole explanation scholars say, and it's like, okay, well, I'm sitting here with tears in my eyes, so are you saying that this is wrong? I'm not supposed to be human. I'm not supposed to feel anything. And I'm supposed to digest all of this information that you just gave me, and I'm supposed to just walk straight and not feel anything? Have we traded human emotion for textbook theory? In ending, the Prophet ﷺ, he encountered a situation where one of his companions actually killed himself. And some people may not be familiar with this situation, but let me explain it to you. Hadith is authentic. Might have been the first time that someone heard this hadith. The hadith on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. with one of the Prophet ﷺ's companions by the name of Tufayl ibn Amr. He wanted to travel to Medina with the Prophet ﷺ along with another companion. And as you know, if any of you have ever been to Medina, Medina is extremely hot. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ promised Jannah for the person who lives in Medina and can be patient with the heat of Medina. It's very hot. This particular companion traveled along with Tufayl ibn Amr. When he got to Medina, he began to experience the heat of Medina. He couldn't take it. And being impatient with his situation, he grabbed a spear from his quiver, and he took the top of the spear and he cut off the tips of his finger until he bled out. He bled out and he killed himself. Tufayl ibn Amr, the companion that traveled along with him, saw him in a dream. فرآه طفيل بن عمرو في منامه فرآه وهيئته حسنة. And Tufayl ibn Amr saw this man in a dream. And his stature was perfect. He looked nice in the dream. And Tufayl, he asked him, he saw him hiding his hands behind his back. مغطيا يديه, he was covering his hands. And Tufayl asked him, ما صنع الله بك? What did Allah do to you for killing yourself? And the man said to Tufayl, he said, غفر لي ربي بهجرتي إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لكن لم يغفر لي يدي. He said, Allah forgave me for making hijrah, migrating to be with the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, except he did not forgive me for my hands. So that's why my hands are covered. When Tufayl ibn Amr woke up, and he went and he told the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم about this dream. Did the Prophet ﷺ say, Astaghfirullah, A'udhu Billah, he's going to Jannah, he's going to the hellfire? Much like what we would say if someone committed suicide today. First thing we say, oh, he's going to the hellfire. MashaAllah. That's your response to someone who was having trouble with life. Can you imagine life gets so difficult for you, living becomes a challenge? Can you imagine? Some of us probably could never imagine that because you live a life of privilege. Walillahi alhamd. And although we're not dead physically, we're dead spiritually, which is even worse. We can't even imagine trying to decide whether to pay your electricity bill or pay your rent. Some of us will never know what that feels like. Some of us will never know what it feels like. Something breaks on your car, you don't even got the money to get it fixed. You have no way to get to work. So you can earn a living to take care of your family. Some of us will never know what it feels like to be divorced and you're stuck with 3, 4, 5 children that you got to feed and take care of all by yourself. When the other person that helped you make the kids, you won't even pick the phone up and answer. Some of us will never know what that feels like. You don't think those situations become overwhelming to the point where the person believes that death in that situation might be better than life? The Prophet ﷺ, when Tufayl ibn Amr narrated to him what he saw in the dream, he said, I saw that companion in the dream, and he was covering his hands, but the rest of his body looked beautiful, and I asked him, what did Allah do to you? And he said, Allah forgave me, except my hands. Allah didn't forgive me for my hands. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma ghfir lahu hatta yaday. May Allah forgive him and forgive his hands. Look at the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ. May Allah forgive him and forgive his hands for what he did to his hands. And the scholars explain this hadith showing that فعل الكبائر, فاعل الكبائر, the person who does a major sin from the belief of Ahl Sunnah, we do not believe that we are going to just say that he's going to the hellfire, colon wahid, one opinion. No, he is under what is called mashi'atullah. He is under the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Insha'Allahu ghafara wa insha'a la yaghfir. That if Allah decides, if Allah wills, he will forgive him. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides or wills, he will not forgive him. So no one should say, oh, he killed herself, she killed herself, or he killed himself. They're going to the hellfire. Yeah, there are clear hadith that state that. Well, there's another hadith that says something different. So now what do you say? There are other narrations that say something different. So what do you say about that? Saying to someone that they're going to the hellfire for killing themselves, it only adds, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Nurun ala nur, light on top of light. When you make statements like that, it's dhulm ala dhulm, it's darkness on darkness. Person is already in a state where they're trying to process the family member killing themselves, blaming themselves for why didn't I intervene? Why didn't I see the red flags? Why didn't I see the signs? How did I let that happen? And then we have the Muslim community coming along and says, well, you know they're going to the hellfire, right? MashaAllah. Where's the rahmah? Where's the mercy? And we pray that we are able to acknowledge and able to recognize the red flags with our children when we see them. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us to see the red flags. Many of us, our children go to public school and we have no clue what they are teaching them in public school. We have no clue the type of experience that they are having in the public school. Bullying, cyberbullying, these things exist. And sometimes many of our children are too embarrassed, to have too much pride to come to us and tell us what's happening. You as a parent have to be actively involved in the life of your children. Actively involved in the lives of your children, because things could be happening right under your nose, and then you will live with regret for the rest of your life. You will have to live with that. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He protect our children in these facilities. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He protect our families. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب عمل يقربنا إلى حبك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك اللهم يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا إلى طاعتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وآخر دعوانا عن الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقيموا الصلاة. الله أكبر.